Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Mursaleen, amma ba'd. Okay, so now we're on point 45, if I can get my words up. Point 45 from Al-Aqidah at-Tahawiyyah of Imam Abu Ja'far at-Tahawi al-Hanafi, rahimahullah. Point 45, 46, 47, 48. All of this is on the mas'ala of Al-Qadr. So today, inshallah, to be honest, the explanation of this requires a lot of detail. And on that note, we've got today, next week and the week after, and then from the 25th and the 2nd, there's a 2-week break for the Hijjah. I think officially for the course itself, it's only the 2nd of July that they've given off, because those are from the days of Eid. But on the 25th, I need the 25th off for myself. So 4th today, 11th and 18th. I think today what we'll do is we'll just read through the matan. And then, inshallah, the 11th and the 18th, and maybe even after the break, we'll still be on the same topic. We'll find out about Dhul Hijjah. As soon as Dhul Hijjah begins, then we will know when Eid Al-Adha will be. But we're looking at roughly the 29th, or somewhere around there, of June, inshallah. Okay, so, yeah, inshallah, time is flying, subhanallah. Right, point 45. Wal asl al-Qadr. Sirrullah ta'ala fi khalqih. So now the origin of Al-Qadr, the base of Al-Qadr, is that this is something which is hidden, and it is of the secrets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over His creation. لم يطلع على ذلك ملك مقرب ولا نبي مرسل. The unseen, the Qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not exposed to anyone except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Neither an angel who is close or a prophet that has been sent. Now this is really important. This is from a Hanafi matan, and here obviously he's talking about the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah. It's not just something which is a matan which is specific to the Hanafi matan. But we will find many people from the Hanafiyyah, those people who say they're following the Hanafi madhab, those people who say they follow the Maliki madhab, the Shafi'i madhab, they will contradict this on many occasions, believing that the unseen is known either to an angel or a prophet that has been sent. Hence they will make tawassul, what they call tawassul, etc. And all of this is completely incorrect. He is saying, لَمْ يَطَّلِعْ عَلَى ذَلِكَ مَلَكٌ مُقَرَّبٌ وَلَا نَبِيٌّ مُرْسَلٌ. The unseen, the Qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has not been given either to an angel who is close or to a Nabi that has been sent. Now this wording here, Malak Muqarrab wa la Nabi Mursal, Shaykh Muhammad ibn Wahhab uses this kind of terminology a lot. He uses it in Usul Thalatha, etc. Now this tells us something which is important. I'm trying to link the two, which is that there is particular styles that the ulama of Ahl Sunnah have used. Until today you will find the ulama using those same kind of approach. And that actually shows you that the fashion of Ahl Sunnah is something which is distinct. And you will not find the people of bid'ah using these kind of terminologies. Why? Because they contradict it themselves. لَمْ يَطَّلِعْ عَلَى ذَلِكَ مَلَكٌ مُقَرَّبٌ وَلَا نَبِيٌّ مُرْسَلٌ. The unseen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something which remains with Him, and it is not given to an angel or a messenger, or a messenger from any one of His messengers. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives it to them out of wahi. And this is revelation from Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever He judges that needs to be shared, He will share subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the asl of it, as He says here, wal asl al-qadr, sirrullah ta'ala fi khalqih. The asl of knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it remains hidden with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what we know is from His favor upon us. Now with this, every single thing that we see in the creation, whether it's religious or irreligious, if it's like, I don't know, new technology that is coming out, who is the originator of that? Where is the asl from? The asl from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. عَلَّمَ الْإِنسَانَ مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches man what they did not know. All of the things that we have built in the life of this dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us after we didn't know about it. And this is the asl of the Qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this is the next bit here. So this is, He has laid down the foundation. Now, وَالتَّعَمُّقُ وَالنَّذَرُ فِي ذَلِكَ ذَرِيئَةُ الْخُذْلَانِ. This is really important. Going too deep into it, let me just see how they've translated it here. Dwelling into this and reflecting too much upon it leads to destruction and loss and results in rebelliousness. I mean, that's not exactly what he has said here, but it is similar. وَالتَّعَمُّقُ وَالنَّذَرُ فِي ذَلِكَ ذَرِيَّةُ الْخُذْلَانِ. Going too deep into the mas'ala of qadr without submitting and constantly looking. Now looking, what he intends by this is ilm al-kalam. Questioning and theorizing, philosophizing. فِي ذَلِكَ ذَرِيَّةُ الْخُذْلَانِ. Dhariya is a means for you then to become rebellious, as he says. وَالسُّلَّمُ الْحِرْمَانِ. And it's a means for a person to be prevented. Sullam al-hirman. Sullam meaning a way for a person to increase in those things that he has been lost in. It's really nice the way he says. وَدَرَجَةُ الطُّغْيَانِ. And a means for him to increase in his stages of transgression. This has not been translated in the English that we've got here, the way that he's translated it. Or the way that he said it in Arabic. فَالْحَذَرْ كُلَّ الْحَذَرْ مِنْ ذَلِكَ نَظَرْ أو فِكْرًا أو وَسْوَسَ. Look at this, subhanAllah. He is saying here, then take caution, with all caution, in looking into the way that they have it, and to overthinking the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or having doubts and wiswas from the shaitan in this. So he is saying here, so be extremely careful about thinking and reflecting on this matter. Well, reflecting is not correct, because reflection is actually something which is good. But here what he is saying, nazar or fikr. Fikr here he is talking about, I feel here is better word, it is overthinking on this matter, or letting doubts about it assail you. Again, doubts meaning waswasa. Again, I feel the translation is not as accurate as it could be. What he means by this, rahimahullah, those people, they don't make taslim to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do not submit to those things which are hidden with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. If something is hidden with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is it upon the creation? For them to submit or for them to question? There's no doubt for them to submit, and this is the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is created. But what he is saying here is, when you start questioning, when you start thinking, maybe it might be like this, maybe like that, theorizing, this is precisely the origins of the kufr of Iblis. خلقتني من نار وخلقت من طين. Why should I make sujood? Questioning the qadr of Allah. I'm created from fire, He's created from clay. And I'm better than him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told him to submit, but he says, no, I'm better than him. And this is precisely what he is saying here. This is a means for a person to be destroyed. It's a means for him to increase in those things that he has been forbidden in, and to elevate in his stages of transgression. So be careful and take all caution in having this kind of nazar, this kind of perspective towards the qadr of Allah. Aw fikran, aw waswasa. Theorizing or allowing shaitan to make wiswas so that he can then have doubts of the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فإن الله تعالى طوى علم القدر عن أنامه ونهاهم عن مرامه. Again, this is quite poetic what he is saying here. But what he is saying here, rahimahullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has left it hidden, again, meaning the ilm of the unseen, from His creation. Let's see everything. Allah has kept the knowledge of the decree away from human beings, from His creation. Really, and anamihi, meaning from all of His creation, from the man, from the jinn, from the angels, from the animals, from the insects. None know the qadr of Allah subhanahu. None know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala how He is going to recompense them, and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to do with them. None know it. And there is a hikmah in this, clearly, and like I said, there is going to be more explanation that comes. I think we're just going to just read this and the next page, and then we can just see what the author is saying as a foundation. But there is a lot more explanation in this. وَنَهَاهُمْ عَنْ مَرَامِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it forbidden for us to inquire about it. Now here, this is important for us to understand. Inquiring in the English language, this is how it says in the translation. Inquiring in the English language Obviously, it could be of a negative nature, but it could also be of a positive nature. Now, the ulama have mentioned that if a person wants to know about the Qadr of Allah, in learning about the wisdom of Allah, learning and increasing about the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed upon us, there is no harm in a person asking about that. What is the hikmah? What is the ruling? What does the sharia say? But here, وَنَهَوْمْ أَمْ مَرَامِهِ is asking to demand a reason, to demand a wisdom, to demand what is the cause. كما قال تعالى في كتابه, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in His book, لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not be asked about what He does, but they are the ones that will be questioned. Hence now in this ayah from Surah Al-Anbiya, ayah number 23, chapter number 23 as well, we learn why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept His qadr hidden from us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has concealed it from us so that He will question. If we knew the qadr of Allah, then we will act accordingly, and then where is the hikmah of us being tested? If we knew the qadr of Allah, the test would fail. And it is possible that everyone then submits. Or everyone does not submit. Allah knows best what would happen. But the fact that it remains hidden makes the people of submission want to submit. And the fact that it remains hidden makes the people who disobey carry on in their disobedience. Had they known what was in front of them of the fire, they would stop their disobedience. لا يسأل ما يفعل وهم يسألون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not be asked, because He is not the one to be asked, subhanahu. Rather, He is the one that will question them. Now, in this is something which is really important. This is what the ulama of usul al-fiqh refer to as taklif. Every single one of us, man and jinn, we become mukallaf. You probably study this when you're doing fiqh, but you then become responsible and accountable. Then you pass away, and then you return back to Allah, and He will ask you about those things that you are responsible and accountable for. In this ayah is proof for us now to say that the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is hidden, because we are the ones that are mukallaf, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not mukallaf. How do we know this? لا يسأل ما يفعل. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not be questioned because He is not accountable. وَهُمْ يسألون. They are the ones that will be questioned. Why? Because they have been created to be accountable. Hence He has left His qadr hidden from us so that He will account us. فَمَنْ سَأَلْ لِمَا فَعَلْ فَقَدْ رَدَّ حُكْمَ الْكِتَابِ. If a person was to ask, why do we have to do certain things? If a person was to ask, what is the question, what is the reason? If a person was to ask, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do such a thing? Then this person has rejected what the book has given us the ruling on. وَمَنْ رَدَّ حُكْمَ الْكِتَابِ كَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And whoever rejects the book and the judgment of it, meaning the kitab, such a person is a disbeliever. Now this is important. Why? Because in this, like I said, the explanation is going to come inshallah, is the refutation of the Qadariyah. Now, the Qadariyah was one of the very first sects that ever came up. They actually came up in the presence of the companions, of some of the younger companions that remained. And they denied Qadr. And they basically said, we reject Qadr and we make ta'wil and interpret the ayat of Qadr to mean something other than what we believe in. Either they will say Qadr means judgment, or they will say Qadr means estimation perhaps. But they don't mean it to mean pre-decree. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr, they say Allah reveals it in the night of judgment. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَاهُ بِقَدْرٍ. Everything that we have created has been created by qadr. It's been created with a just estimation. That's ta'wil, and that's not correct. Because we believe qadr to mean the divine, infinite knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He knew in eternity. They rejected it. Why do they reject? These are known as the Qadariyah. Why do they reject Qadr? For 4 reasons. Number 1, they say if Qadr existed, then it is not fair that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enabled some people and He has rejected from some people. So for example, you have now been born a believer. Is it fair that you're a believer and John is a disbeliever? And then he lives a lifestyle, heading to the fire while you live a lifestyle going to Jannah. How is that fair? So they have said, no, there is no such thing as Qadr. There is no such thing as Tawfiq and Hidayah. They reject all of these things. And they say the reason why you are a Muslim is because you chose to be a Muslim. It's not that it was decreed before. Because they're saying it won't be fair. Number 2, another reason why they say it won't be fair as well, but for a different reason, they say if Qadr existed, then it means all sins and shirk and bad things happen because Allah wanted it to happen, therefore Allah Himself is to blame. Na'udhu billah. So basically Allah, according to us, and this is obviously the way of Ahlul Sunnah, and this is the issue of ijma', Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the pen to write until Yawm al-Qiyamah. What did the pen write? The pen wrote everything that's going to happen, all the good things and all the bad things. The pen wrote the kufr of Iblis, the pen wrote the kufr of Fir'aun, the pen wrote the kufr of Abu Jahl and all those people are going to come after. So what they're saying here in their misinterpretation and their misunderstanding of the text, they say, okay, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already decreed kufr, then whose fault is the kufr? It's not Iblis' fault, it's Allah's fault, na'udhu billah. So they have to then come to a conclusion and say, listen, we cannot attribute anything negative to Allah. So they may even say that the reason why we're doing this is to praise Allah. So we will reject Qadr altogether. That way Iblis made kufr because he wanted to make kufr, not because Allah already wrote it before. Second reason. Third reason. Third reason why they reject Qadr is because they say that it attributes ignorance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How does it attribute ignorance to Allah? They argue that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knew, then why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed things to happen? Is He allowing His Qadr to take part because He wants to see whether His Qadr is going to happen or not? And again, what they will say is that they are saying, they're only saying this to remove any kind of imperfection from Allah. But in actual fact, by rejecting the Kitab and the Sunnah, you are attributing imperfection to Allah. So in their minds, in their deficient way of understanding things, they're basically saying, okay, Allah has decreed something that's going to happen. So imagine there's a book which is going to say, these are the things that I expect to happen. So then they're waiting to see, is it going to happen or not? This is what they're saying. Allah is actually waiting to see, is it going to happen or not? So they're saying this is actually a means of attributing ignorance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they say that's not permissible for us to believe in. So we will reject Qadr, and anything that happens, Allah will record it at that point when it happens. And that's their way of understanding how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will record deeds. So that's the third reason. The fourth reason, it shows inability to Allah. How does it show inability to Allah? Inability in the sense that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to put people in Jannah, He would just put people in Jannah. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to put people in the fire, He would just put people in the fire. Why are we going through this whole process when He knows the end result? So they're saying, from us it doesn't make any sense. If He knows you're going to Jannah, if He knows this person's going to the fire, just put them in the fire and put them in Jannah. And again, as you can probably understand, this is deficient, but this is the way that they think. So one of the very first people to come up with this was a person called Ma'bad al-Juhani. And like I said, he was a person who existed at the time of the companions. And then he was promoted by another person called Ghaylan al-Dimishqi. These are the heads of the Qadariyah. These then became the heads of the Mu'tazila madhab as well, who obviously adopted the way of the Qadariyah. Like I said, inshallah, more explanation on that will come later on. So, What they're saying here, so this is what Imam at-Tahawiyyah said, فَمَنْ سَأَلَ لِمَا فَعَلْ, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala record the Qadr? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do such and such and such and such and such and such? He is addressing them here. فَقَدْ رَدَّ حُكْمُ الْكِتَابِ, they have rejected what the book has said about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَنْ رَدَّ حُكْمُ الْكِتَابِ كَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ, whoever rejects what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to submit to in the book, then he has rejected the book. And this is kufr, major kufr. Point number 46. فَهَذَا جُمْلَةُ مَا يَحْتَاجُ إِلَيْهِ مَنْ هُوَ مُنَوِّرٌ قَلْبُهُ مِنْ أَوْلِيَاءِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. Allahu Akbar. May Allah make us of them. He is saying here, this is in brief, let me see what it says in the translation. This is in sum, so a summary of what it means to have your heart enlightened for those who are of the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning those people who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning what he is saying here is that when you have the correct aqidah, there is a light in your heart. وَهِيَ دَرَجَةُ الرَّاسِخِينَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. And again, there is more explanation that I want to talk about these, but we'll revisit this inshallah at its appropriate time. وَهِيَ دَرَجَةُ الرَّاسِخِينَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. This is the level of those people who are firmly grounded in knowledge. لِأَنَّ الْعِلْمِ عِلْمًا. This is because knowledge is of two types. عِلْمٌ فِي الْخَلْقِ مَوْجُودٌ وَعِلْمٌ فِي الْخَلْقِ مَفْقُودٌ. Knowledge is of two types. Knowledge which exists that the creation know about and is present amongst them, and knowledge that the creation do not have access to. And this is very important in answering what we have talked about from the shubuhat and the doubts of the Qadariyyah. And this is one of the usul, meaning in the sense that we now understand, as an answer to the four things that they have said really, but one of the principles behind this is we say, listen, ilm is certain things that we know about, and some of the questions and the objections that you've got, you delve into things that we don't know about. So from the point, from the very beginning, we will say, look, knowledge is of two types. That which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told about, we accept, we act upon, we submit, and we call to. Those things that we don't know about, we just say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam. And with that, is something for us to understand as well, and we will see in the next bit what he says. Those things that we don't know about, you shouldn't delve in. Why? Because you are not mukallaf in them. And you will find a lot of people within Islam, outside of Islam, asking questions which they are not mukallaf for. For example, I am a disbeliever. This is a hypothetical situation, but this is something that comes up a lot. A disbeliever will say, I am a disbeliever, may Allah protect us from disbeliever. A disbeliever will say, I am a disbeliever. What's God going to do with me? I do such and such. Will God forgive me? So now, they will ask you to speak on behalf of Allah. And they will ask you, well, God will do this, God could do that, God could do this. What you will say here, listen, this is what our religion teaches us. Ultimately, the affair is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because we have knowledge which is here amongst us. We know if you have tawheed and do good deeds, you go to Jannah. If you have kufr and you've got bad deeds, you go to the fire. As for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to judge, then this is ilmu fil khalqi mafqud. This is something that we are not mukallaf in. People will ask you things about history, things will ask you about why did Iblis do this, all these different hypothetical things that we don't really have an answer for. Why do we not have an answer for it? This is because ilm ilman, as the Shaykh says. Ilm is of two types. That which you know, that is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that that is good for you, and that is what you should know, and that is what you should act upon. And that which you don't know, khalas, there's a benefit in you not knowing it. Therefore he says, فَإِنْكَارُ الْعِلْمِ الْمَوْجُودِ كُفْرٌ. Those people who reject the knowledge which here is there present, this is kufr, subhanAllah. From the qadr of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us what is sufficient for us to know, accept it. If you don't accept it, kufr. But look at also in this here now, وَادِّعَاءُ الْعِلْمِ الْمَفْقُودِ كُفْرٌ. Now look at this here. Those people who go into the knowledge which is absent, that which we are not mukallaf in, those things that we are unaware of, they will delve in those issues and they will leave the ilm which is mawjood. So what the Shaykh is saying here, these people who go into these theories and all these different things in, Aqidah and all these different things which we don't have any kind of taklif in, not only are they leaving the ilm which is mawjood, which is kufr in itself, but they are falling into something which we don't have any relationship in, which is kufr in itself. So there is two aspects of kufr in the things that they are falling into. As for the people of ilm, so now here it says, we'll talk about it in a second. As for the people of ilm, they are the people who are munawwirun qalbuhu min awliya Allah. This is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted from them their submission of the ilm which is mawjood, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts an illumination in their hearts. Therefore there's no kufr. For the people who challenge Qadr have fallen into two kufrs, according to what the Shaykh is saying. وَلَا يَثْبُتُ الْإِيمَانِ إِلَّا بِقُبُولِ الْعِلْمِ مَوْجُودٍ. And your Iman will never be established until you accept the ilm which is mawjood, which is the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَتَرْكِ طَلَبِ الْعِلْمِ الْمَفْقُودِ. And to leave off the ilm which you are unaware of. That will then create Iman, that will then create for you ilm, that will create for you submission, that will give for you peace as well. I mean, inshallah, like I said, there's going to be more on this, but in Al-Aqidah Wasatiyyah, Shaykh Muhammad himself in his explanation, he gives about 7 or 8 benefits as to believing in Qadr for the believer, and how it brings tranquility and peace and comfort and optimism and hope. As for the people of kufr, wallahi al-azim, ikhwan, I know of people who are not Muslim. They don't have the things that we have in our Aqidah. They don't believe in Qadr, they don't believe in these things. So the slightest of a pricking of the thorn, they start swearing, effing this and that. And they can't understand what's happening to them. The guy is living his life, he's trying his best to do what is right, and when something goes wrong, they have no explanation. So the only other thing that he can do is then go and drink alcohol and all these other things to just wash it away, but then he's just repeating the cycle. As for the people of ilm though, they have an acceptance of ilm. Sorry, the people of accepting Qadr, they have an acceptance of Iman. Their Iman is firm. They accept the knowledge which is there. They will act upon it. And they will know anything which is khair is from Allah, and anything which is bad that comes to them, this is also from Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only decree that is which is good for them. Yes, bro.
Qadr is leaving the matter to Allah, right?
Qadr, tawakkul is leaving the matter to Allah. Qadr is pre-decree. Meaning what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for us when the pen wrote. I mean, that's the recording of the pre-decree. The actual pre-decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is connected to His knowledge, which is infinite. Right, so that's point 46. 45 completed, 46 completed. 47 and 48, inshallah, will end. For 47, وَنُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّوْحِ وَالْقَلَمِ. So now he's moving on to another area of Qadr, which is literally what we were just talking about now. When a person believes in Qadr, they have to believe that this has been recorded in the preserved tablet. And this is known as the Lawh al-Mahfuz. Lawh al-Mahfuz is the book that the pen wrote in. وَبِجَمِيعِ مَا فِيهِ قَدْ رُقِمْ. And everything which has been written into it, which is inscribed, meaning everything, that's it, can't change, is there. Right, what does that mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the pen to write. When the pen wrote everything that was going to happen till Yawm al-Qiyamah, until the last person goes to Jannah and the last person goes to the fire. All of that has been done, according to the correct opinion. Some people from the ulama have said that the pen wrote until Yawm al-Qiyamah, but others have said it wrote until people have entered the final abode. Whatever the case, the pen wrote everything that was going to happen concerning man. This is now in a preserved book which is known as the Lawh al-Mahfuz. We will discuss this in further detail, but there are certain things in Lawh al-Mahfuz which will not change, concerning all of His creation, about you, about me, about everyone. And there are certain things in the Lawh al-Mahfuz which are subject to change. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will change them. How does He change them? By your tawbah, by your istighfar, by your doing of good deeds, by your dua and all of these things. Right. This is known as Lawh al-Mahfuz. When you are then born, the angel copies from the Lawh al-Mahfuz to your own personal books. And this can happen. This happens on an annual basis. This is Laylatul Qadr. Why is Laylatul Qadr so important? Laylatul Qadr, Laylatul Qadr, تنزل الملائكة تنزل الملائكة والروح من أمر. تنزل الملائكة والروح. No, after تنزل الملائكة وما يكون بلا. من كل أمر. That's what I was looking for. In all of its affairs. So now, for you, all of your affairs. For him, all of his affairs. For me, all of them. Where are the affairs coming from? It is taken from the Lawh al-Mahfuz, which is the infinite knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That pen wrote 50,000 years before the creation of anything. Before the creation of the heavens, before the creation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote about you, about me, about everyone. Everything's in that book. When you now come into, now how many years it's been now? Millions, billions perhaps. You've now come into the dunya. Every single Laylatul Qadr, there is an annual copying from the Lawh al-Mahfuz, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already had decreed in eternity about yourself. Now it's transferred from that book to your book for the next coming year. So your life, your rizq, your ability to do good deeds, your choices to do bad deeds, your tawbah and your istighfar, if you were to turn back, everything is there, transferred from that book to that book. So what he is saying here, وَنُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّوْحِ, that book, that preserved tablet. Sometimes in the Quran it comes as al-Kitab. يَمْحُ اللَّهُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيُثْبِتُ وَعِنْدَهُ الْكِتَابُ وَعِنْدَهُ al-Kitab. In Surah Ra'd, at the end of it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leaves certain things and He takes away certain things. وَإِنْدَهُ al-Kitab, and with Him is the mother of all books. And sometimes it's referred to as Lawh al-Mahfuz. وَالْقَلَمْ is the pen that wrote. وَبِجَمِيعِ مَا فِيهِ قَدْ رُقِمَ, and everything which is in that preserved tablet which has been inscribed. وَنُؤْمِن, so that's what we believe in. فَلَوْ اجْتَمَعَ الْخَلْقُ كُلُّهُمْ عَلَى شَيْءٍ كتب الله تعالى فيه أنه كائن ليجعله غير كائن لم يقدر عليه. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed something, if all of the creation tried together to bring about something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not written, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for you something. If all of the creation tried to prevent it, لم يقدروا عليه, no one will be able to stop it. None. ولو اجتمعوا كلهم على شيء, and if they all gathered to try and bring about something, لم يكتبه الله تعالى فيه, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for, ليجعله كائنا لم يقدروا عليه. If they try to bring about something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not written for you, they will not be able to bring it about. Hence in at-Tirmidhi, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been reported to say, جَفَّ رُفِعَ الْأَقْلَامُ وَجَفَّتِ الصُّحُفُ. Here the author is using something similar. I mean, the pens have been lifted and the ink is now dry on the tablet. Here, and we've got a description of the tablet from Ibn Abbas and others on the companions. Like I said, inshallah, that will come in the future lessons. But he says it is made out of nur, and the ink and the contents of it are like pearls. The way he describes it is beautiful. Anyway, جَفَّ الْقَلَمْ بِمَا هُوَ كَائِنٌ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. That now the pen and the ink has dried, everything until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Now again, like I said, we're going to talk about all certain things subject to change. Messenger of Allah, for example, he says, لا يرد القضاء إلا الدعاء. For example, it's in Musnad Ahmad. Messenger of Allah said that nothing will change the qada except for dua. So there are certain things that can change. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, like I said in the ayah in Surah Ra'd, towards the end of Surah Ra'd, يَمْحُ اللَّهُ مَا يَشَاءُ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will blot out whatever He wants. But a person then might ask, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knew it, and then you make dua, and then your qadr changes, does that mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't know that you were going to do that? So now what the author is saying here in the previous page, as we said before, that a person is not allowed to go into those kind of affairs. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not to be asked. And the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the sir of Allah, is the secret of Allah. And it's not something that we should dwell with. However, the ulama do have answers. And this is why here at the top here, those people who have the correct understanding and they submit, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, huwa munawwirun qalbuhum min awliya Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts an illumination in their hearts. And when that illumination comes, that basically means guidance. When we're talking about nur, whenever you see the word nur in the Quran, it refers to knowledge and righteous actions. وَهِيَ دَرَجْةُ الرَّاسِخِينَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. Hence what he says next, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts a nur in their heart, and this is the level of those people who are firmly grounded in ilm.
So someone who is firmly grounded in ilm, Allah makes nur in their heart.
Nur, yes. So whenever you find the word, like I said, whenever you find the word nur in the Quran and in the Sunnah, it refers to knowledge and it refers to righteous actions. Hence the ayah of nur, Allah nur as-samawati wal ard. مثل النور كمشكاة في مصباح. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the nur of the heavens and the earth, meaning He is the one who illuminates the heavens and the earth. And the example of the nur of the lantern that exists inside the heart of a believer, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, he said it refers to ilm and righteous actions. So now, the people who have ilm, and they have that nur, and they have righteous actions, they are the ones who will submit to this. And for the people who do not have ilm or that nur and lack righteous actions and lack submission, they will be constantly questioning, can Allah bring something about? Can Allah do this? Can Allah do that? The people who have that nur, they are the ones who will have the answer as a response to those people who have these shubahat. So going back to the question that we had, if a person makes dua and Allah changes his qadr, does that mean that Allah didn't know in the first place? So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, let's just say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes for you that you're going to go Hajj this year, or you are not going to go Hajj this year. Then you make dua, and then you make dua, and then you make dua, and then Allah sends you for Hajj. Now you don't know whether it was written for you or not. All you know now is how things have turned out, right? Because this is the secret of Allah. But they are asking now, because of their philosophy, for argument's sake, Hajj was not written. And now Hajj has been written. Does that mean that Allah didn't know? The answer to that is very simple. Is that it wasn't written. And Allah knew that you were going to make dua, and then Allah gave it to you. Just like you do with your child. You now have prevented your child because he hasn't done what you have told him to do. But had he done it, you would have given him a treat, for example. So then when he does do it, you give him the treat. So now he's thinking, well, I didn't do it, so I don't deserve the treat. But then when he ends up doing it, I say, well, how did I get this treat? See the point? So here, this is very important. The nur that exists in the heart of the people, they're the people of Sunnah, they're the people of correct Aqidah, and they're the people who would submit. And with that knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them tawfiq. And they are the ones who are able to respond to those people who have no nur. Then the author says, rahimahullah, وَمَا أَخْطَى الْعَبْدِ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُصِيبُهُ وَمَا أَصَابَهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُخْطِئُ. Meaning, whatever is supposed to cross a servant's path, he will not be able to avert. And whatever calamity afflicts him, he will not be able to cross the path without him being afflicted with it. Last point for today, inshallah. وَعَلَى الْعَبْدِ, and it's upon the servant, أن يعلم أن الله قد سبق علمه في كل كائن من خلقه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows about all of His servants, subhanahu. And this knowledge is ancient. This knowledge has no beginning because it is from the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah has no beginning and He has no end. And this is important when it comes to the Asma al-Sifat, something that we covered already in the beginning of this book. When you've got an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that attribute is always part of His Dhat subhanahu. So Allah has always been merciful, Allah has always been creating, Allah has always been knowledgeable, meaning all-knowing. So when the Qadr is connected to the knowledge of Allah, that knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always existed as part of His attributes subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in eternity Allah knew about you, and He knew about Him, and He knew about me, and He knew about all of His creation. This is what He is saying here. وَعَلَى الْعَبْدِ, and it's upon the servant, and يَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala قَدْ سَبَقَ عِلْمُهُ, that his knowledge has preceded when? When is the knowledge of Allah? Because it is something which is connected to him and he has no beginning, therefore it has always been there, part of him subhanahu. فِي كُلِّ كَائِن مِّن خَلْقِهِ, part of his attributes subhanahu. فَقَدَّرَ ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرًا مُحْكَمًا مُبْرَمًا. And Allah subhanahu, because of this knowledge, this infinite knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah then decreed a law that's going to pass through, an order that's going to pass through, which will then be executed. Allah is going to create you, Allah is going to create you, Allah is going to create me. This is part of the knowledge that Allah is going to give you rizq, Allah is going to give you, and all of these different things. لَيْسَ فِيهِ نَاقِدٌ وَلَا مُعَقِّبٌ وَلَا مُزِيلٌ وَلَا مُغَيِّرٌ وَلَا نَاقِصٌ وَلَا زَائِدٌ مِنْ خَلْقِهِ فِي سَمَاوَاتِهِ وَأَرْضِهِ سُبْحَانَهُ. He says here, there is nothing which can contradict his qadr. There is no delaying of his qadr. There is no removal of it. There is no changing of it. There is no falling short of it, and there is no increasing of it for all of his creation in the heavens and the skies and on his earth.
There's no delaying, stopping?
Okay, so let me say this again. لَيْسَ فِيهِ نَاقِدٌ. There is nothing which can nullify it. وَلَا مُعَقِّبٌ. And there is nothing which can delay it. وَلَا مُزِيلٌ. And there is nothing which could wipe it out. وَلَا مُغَيِّرٌ. And there's nothing that can even change it, let alone wipe it out. وَلَا نَاقِصٌ. And there's nothing which could, make it fall short. وَلَا زَائِدٌ. And there's nothing that can make it go extra. If Allah has decreed for you to live 70 years and 1 day, khalas, that's it. Nobody can make it into 2. And nobody can reduce it. مِنْ خَلْقِهِ, from his creation. فِي السَّمَاوَاتِهِ, all of his creation that exists in the skies, وَأَرْضِهِ, and on his earth, subhanahu. وَذَلِكَ مِنَ عَقَدِ الْإِيمَانِ. And this is from the beliefs of Iman. Now here he's using the word aqd. Now aqd basically refers to a knot. And we did this before as well when it comes to the linguistic meaning of the word aqidah. The linguistic meaning of the word aqidah is aqda uqda, meaning to tie a knot. And the reason why aqidah is called aqd, because this is something which is firm. When you tie a knot and you make it really strong and fastened, it becomes very difficult for you to open it. Sometimes the only way that you can open it is to cut it, or to destroy it perhaps. Therefore, aqidah is called aqd because a person has that strong rabt, as in it's very strong. Another reason why the ulama call it aqd is because, similar to what we did last time about the mithaq, which is that a person has a connection of responsibility towards the thing that he believes. So now he is saying here, this is from the aqidah of iman. وَأُصُولِ الْمَعْرِفَةِ, and it's the foundations of knowledge. وَالْإِعْتِرَافِ بِتَوْحِيدِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَرُبُوبِيَّتِهِ, and to recognize the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Lordship. كما قال تعالى في كتاب العزيز, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in His powerful book, وَخَلَقَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ فَقَدَّرَهُ تَقْدِيرًا. This is Surah Al-Furqan, ayah number 2. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created everything, and He has given everything of His creation a due qadr, its share portion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ahzab, this is now chapter number 33, ayah number 38, وَكَانَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ قَدْرًا مَقْدُورًا. And the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an order, which a qadr, which will be passed, which is a decree which will be passed. And there are other ayats, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in many places in the Quran about His qadr. Okay, so what does Ma'bad al-Juhani and Ghailan Dimishki, what do they say about these ayats? Similar to what we said before, what they will say, وَخَلَقَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ فَقَدَّرَهُ تَقْدِيرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything, and there is a share. Not that there is a pre-decree. وَكَانَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ قَدْرًا مَقْدُورًا. And the decree of Allah is going to come through. Yeah, the decree of Allah, meaning there is no pre-decree, it's just what Allah allows to happen. And this is how they make ta'wil. And this is very important. The people of bid'ah will always change the actual meaning. And sometimes it doesn't even make sense the way they do it. Right. Yeah.
So, for example, the ayah that you said, they would flip it on its head.
Yeah.
Say it means something else.
Exactly. This is the nature of ta'wil. Because they rejected Qadr. The Qadariyah. Right. So the last bit here. فَوَيْلٌ لِمَنْ صَارَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى فِي الْقَدْرِ خَصِيمًا. So woe to be upon those people who are in opposition and they object to the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now here, this is important. Wail comes in the Quran many times. Wail lil-musallin, wail lil-mutaffifin. What does wail mean? The ulama say wail has three meanings. Number one, wail refers to curse. So what is the curse? Somebody who is far away from the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, some say wail refers to a major sin. And number three, some of them say wail is a position, a place, a valley in the hellfire. It's a name of a valley in the hellfire. So wailun lil mutaffifin, wail meaning that valley of the hellfire for the people of tatfif. Wailun lil musallin, alladhina hum an salati sahun. Those people who are negligent of their prayers, they don't preserve their prayers, wail is for them. What is that wail? They are far away from the mercy of Allah, number one. Number two, they are fallen into major sin. And number three, a special valley in the hellfire. These are the people who have prayed. Imagine the people who don't pray. These are the people who have prayed, but they don't pray properly. Wail for them, may Allah protect us. So now what he is saying here, Imam al-Tahawi, فَوَيْلٌ لِمَنْ سَارَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى فِي الْقَدْرِ خَصِيمًا. Wail is for these people also. Sin and being far away from the mercy of Allah and that valley in the hellfire. وَأَحْدَرَ لِلنَّظَرِ فِيهِ قَلْبًا سَقِيمًا. And he brings to his understanding of things with a heart which has a disease in it. And again, he's being poetic in the way that he's saying here. But a person, when it comes to the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has a sick heart. Basically, the person never submits. He never accepts. And he's constantly questioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, لَقَدْ الْتَمَسَ بِوَهْمِهِ فِي فَحْسِ الْغَيْبِ سِرًّا كَتِيمًا. This person has taken it upon himself with his wahm. Now wahm is something which is really important because it comes in usul al-fiqh and it comes also in mustal al-hadith, which I'm not sure if you guys are going to study as part of this course, but wahm, and also also part of Aqidah here. Wahm is a lack of knowledge. We have yaqeen and you have ghalab al-dhann. This is the highest level of knowledge. So now, have you got wudu? Are you sure you got wudu? Have you broken your wudu? This is yaqeen. I've got wudu. Now he can go and pray. Right. Another person will say, I've got wudu. I went to the bathroom, but I'm pretty sure that I did wudu. So the wudu I'm in right now is after I went to the bathroom. This is not 100%, but he's got a very strong indication. Another person, he prays. He's finished the salah. Was it 3 or was it 4? Pretty sure it's 4. Khalas, this is not yaqeen now. You've got yaqeen, I prayed 4, I know what I recited, I had khushu', etc. That's yaqeen, that's the highest level of ilm. Second below that is ghalab al-dhann. Ghalab al-dhann is still ilm. And you're not going to be questioned if you had made a mistake in it, because you are now going with what you think is likely. Right. The lowest spectrum of this ilm now here, even worse than jahl, is wahm. And this is what he is saying here. لَقَدْ الْتَمَسَ بِوَهْمِهِ فِي فَحْسِ الْغَيْبِ سِرًّا كَتِيمًا. This person has engaged in the discussion of qadr with his wahm. What is wahm? Wahm is when a person thinks he knows it all, but he's ignorant. He's got nothing. Wahm is when a person thinks he knows it all, but he's got nothing. Zero. So what he is saying here, لَقَدْ الْتَمَسَ بِوَهْمِهِ, he is engaged with qadr with his wahm. What's he thinking? He thinks, oh, I'm clever, I've got ilm al-kalam, I can theorize, I can question, I can, bring about judgment, I can deduce, I can analyze. فِي في فحص الغيب, because what he is trying to do, he's trying to check the unseen. سرا كتيما. How has he translated it here? He is trying to uncover a secret that can never be uncovered. وعاد بما قال فيه أفاكا أثيما. And as a result, what he ends up then saying, because of his wahm, are lies and sins. So when it comes to the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of his lack of submission, he engages in it with his wahm, and because there is nothing there is no knowledge there, because none will have knowledge, because even the closest angel and every single messenger that was sent, they all submitted to the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the highest level of ubudiyyah, this is the highest level of iman, this is the highest level of ilm and intellect. But this person thinks, no, you know what, I can actually challenge it. When those people who are better than this person, such as the angels and the prophets and the messengers, who are actually better than this person, they didn't challenge it. But this person feels like he can challenge it. So what he is saying here, وَعَادَ بِمَا قَالَ فِيهِ, what he will then only be reduced to saying and believing in أَفَّاكٍ, which are lies and theories, أَثِيمًا, sinful lies, and he ends up being an evildoer as a result. Like I said, these are just the readings from what the author has to say when it comes to the qadr of Allah. Like I said, I think this has taken up the hour. Inshallah, next week and the future lessons we'll be looking at what the author has said here in more detail, because there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of stuff that we haven't actually mentioned, which we will inshallah in due course. The next point after that, وَالْعَرْشُ وَالْكُرْسِي حَقٌّ. Point number 49, he then talks about the arsh and the kursi, and in those lessons we'll be talking about the description of the arsh and the description of the kursi, and what it means to believe in the arsh, and some of the masail and aqidah connected to the arsh and the kursi. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he allows us to understand la ilaha illallah, and that he keeps us on the manhaj of Salaf al-Salih, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps us firm upon it until we meet him, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us of those who submit, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala illuminates for us our souls and our hearts, and that he makes us of the people of knowledge and action, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects us from all forms of kufr, and that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that whatever he has written for us, that he writes for us, that is good, and that he blesses us in it, and that whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for us which is bad, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala averts it from us, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to have sabr in the best way with whatever that he is going to test us with. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he has mercy on us, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases us in all forms of goodness. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Any questions? Yeah. So the Qadariyah, okay, I can't remember what order I mentioned them in, but I'll just say the four. Number one, they said that it wouldn't be fair. I think that was the first one actually, that it wouldn't be fair. And what they call this al-adl, meaning they say to negate qadr is adl, affirmation of adl and justice for Allah. Why? If Allah has made Muhammad a believer and he's made John a disbeliever from birth, this is not what we believe in. Of course, everybody is born upon fitrah and everybody is given the chance to have tawfiq and hidayah, and some people accept it, some people reject it. But what they say here in their, like I said, their deficient way of understanding, they say it's not fair. Muhammad is born a Muslim, John is born a disbeliever. John carries on his life as being a disbeliever and he goes to the hellfire. And this person, he does good deeds, he's brought up doing good deeds and he goes to Jannah. How is that fair, they say? So they say, no, there is no such thing as qadr of Allah. Muhammad chose to be a Muslim, not because Allah decreed it, not because Allah favoured him. And John chose to be a kafir, not because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not guide this person, because he didn't want guidance himself. So they call this adl. That's the first reason. You got the rest of them, yeah? Yeah, barakallahu feek. Barakallahu feek. Yeah. Yeah. The two kufrs that the author has mentioned here, those people who challenge qadr. فإنكار العلم الموجود كفر وادعاء العلم المفقود كفر. Those people who challenge qadr, they reject the things that we are supposed to know, such as submission, the kitab and the sunnah, understanding salaf as-salih. They reject that, so that's kufr in itself. And then they fall into things which are from the unseen, which we don't have knowledge of, and then they start theorizing about that, and that's kufr in itself as well. As for the people of ilm, they fall into two types of iman, if you like. Iman in that which we know of and we practice, and iman of the unseen. Wallahi, this religion is beautiful. Allah keep us firm upon it. Wallahi, the biggest khasara, the biggest loss is that a person doesn't have this religion, or even worse, that he had it and he left it. And this is why the author is actually saying here that one of the biggest ways that a person could fall into it is at-ta'ammuq wa-nadhr fi dhalik. Is for a person to go deep into these affairs which he has no knowledge of. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of us, we don't go into the issues of qadr. A lot of people deviate from the religion because of desires and the life of this dunya, whether it's money or drugs or women, whatever it might be. But in actual fact, it all goes back to this, which is submission. If a person knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for you. I was explaining this to my children the other day. They said something which was like silly. They just said, if we rob the bank, we can buy it. I goes to them, listen. Say you got that £1 million, whatever it might be, and that's now in your pocket. What are you going to do with it? We can do this, we can do that, we can do this. Okay, khair. This is everything that you want to accomplish for yourself. Fine. But you don't know what Allah has written for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for you and me and all of His creation. Every single breath that you breathe has been written. Every single blink of the eyelid, every single pumping of the heart, every single penny, every single morsel, every single sip of water has been written. You're not going to get more, as He has said, and you're not going to get less. No. That's what has been written. What is your relationship with that? Is that you submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He will give you what He has written for you in the best possible manner with barakah and khair. If you choose to do it in a haram manner, you're not going to increase in your rizq and you're not going to decrease in your rizq. But you have chosen for yourself to do it in a haram manner. What have you attained by it? You've not attained an increase in rizq. All you have attained for yourself is sin and a lack of barakah and a lack of goodness. Therefore, what He has said here, wallahi, is the haqq. People stop obeying Allah and they fall into the disobedience of Allah. People act in accordance for the life of this dunya and they leave the akhirah because of the lack of submission, which goes back to the issue of qadr. And this is why He is saying here, the people who have submission and acceptance of the qadr, who are munawwirun qalbuhu min awliya Allah. These people have an illumination in their heart and they are from the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's not talking about an abstract group that, these pious companions. He's talking about people who are walking amongst us. Why? These are the people of submission. And the people who don't have this nur, this is because of the lack of qadr and submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallah, it's ajib. Khair ikhwan, inshallah. I don't want to hold you for longer than I already have. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Barakallah, inshallah. I'll see you next week, inshallah.